Hello. There are five identities of possession slash hyperpossession over the experts on all of the books and over on all of the sciences, therefore including over the experts on the Old Testament and on the experts on the Quran. For example, as collusions at the same time, however, with the counters to these religions, to these books, and with names and or as nature's relative at the same time, and the difference of that. And this is relative to where and to how we have black pupils, white divides at the same time. We have the same color eyes. Simultaneously, we have different color eyes. So to understand this, we have to observe these five identities. They're connected, but these five distinct identities of reasons that motivate people to leave out. For example, at the beginning of the Old Testament, it says, all that one, the only thing that everyone needs to know, and the only thing that's important is if you know right here, right to this part to here, before the tree of life and the tree of knowledge of good and evil in the Old Testament, before this, it says up to here in the book and what became before it. See the value of truth before the smallest finite detail now, as it was itself. For example, this is per science of pantheism slash hyperpantheism, not just more probably, but demonstrably having been revealed as other before the sciences became criminally foreign influenced, tactically delusions wrought, therefore strategically, by the way. Many pray, vaccines. But this is science. This is science things. Before modern religions were messengers were even born, the sciences had already become criminally foreign influenced uses of their names. Therefore, all groupings of humanity. No, because that would be sensed. Because now all voicings for humanity, because now individually grouped in together. It forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded names A through Z as the human species volume slash S. The individual body as a species body of individual bodies. Group differences were in demonstration of this, and plus how the other species bodies are distinctly, non distinctly, and simultaneously just like ourselves, and by what is hyper simultaneous. Additionally, to where and how what is simultaneous and sequential, and the difference of that is one of the things demonstrated by the difference of having a species volume science that is simultaneously distinct from but non distinct from, and while as being an individual volume science. Babadialos. That's the word I've donated to each language. And the plural is Babadialos seeds. And we leave out the difference, unless it's sensed uses of it by systems, tactically, other. No, the systems that leave out the smallest finite detail, for example, leave out the value of what is actually more probably and demonstrably true always, not denying the slight sequence, having been truth before the smallest finite detail now. Even if everyone agrees and loves to agree why they agree about the past, which actually unfolded true before. And it changes the whole world, makes them a unity. Nature will still continue to demonstrate negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures. So to understand this is why it's showing us to appreciate, for example, how the cell nucleus, cell body, cell wall, slash S is about five. Appreciation of five distinct identities of sequence slash simultaneous nature. It's about appreciation of five distinct identities of positive that can be simultaneously positive or not. And this is more probably and is increasingly demonstrable, more demonstrably having been where and how the need to discern um, things like criminal insidiousness came from. Negative reasons. Even the negative can be shown how hyper positive. For example, this preaching method that came from before modern religion's messengers were even born, a hyper archetypal criminal enterprise, if you will. If you won't, please observe how the increasing value with questions natural to every human being, with their history of their countries, A through Z, modern countries. Before our modern countries' leaders were even born, all humanity was forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded to entertain criminal insidiousness natures of positives and negatives simultaneously with as collusions with identity and names uses. Exactly the way the breaching method knew that everyone would be doing it everywhere the species volume is. Otherwise, that body would be sensed, even if that body would be in a majority of people, even if it is a majority of countries. We came through this, that which was left, which designed the suburbs from here to China to Russia to Ukraine, across to Zimbabwe, more than more so than many ways. Some ways more so than any country's founders. The breaching method forced their founders to entertain uses of names, including only one person could speak for at a time, the unity of a country. See, now this breaching method took all locations, areas, and states to predicate acts with facts roles, needs, and natures. For example, relative to this, how could they have left out so long? We have black peoples, white survivors, we have the same color eyes, different color eyes at the same time. We have the answers that had other things. Our founders told us to blame the breaching method. What was slavery about? The breaching method assigned that and rolls with that and all kinds of crazy things. See witch trials. Okay, witch trials, we know someone's making things up there. Even if the whole thing was made up, it's about the slavery method against our founders, the torture and extortion method. We're supposed to speak about the extortion of George Washington, telling no lies. That means not valuing the lies of others, using truths for lies, and multi-front, and or the person doing that, which is increasingly self-valuing. Formal statutes and precedents, descriptions, and motivations, narratives by per uses of them, and informal ones. At the same time, collusions with the uses of the differences of that. Former director of the FBI, Robert Luskin, in a whole bunch of different countries, and their extended family members have the use of the adjacents and conjunctions to people physically, metaphysically, and identity. See, these are three volume sciences that are simultaneously manifest as value because of its identity of relationship to itself, and the value of that equally, where we have any subject that we could um, observe or make up, individually grouped and together. There, there, there are there are five ways distinctly. There is a possession by nature over the smallest finite detail of anything, real or made up. That is also distinctly itself to all the group parts of it. It is distinctly itself to all the simultaneous parts of it and the voicings of that. English arts. I took at Central Connecticut State University. I did a double major in communication. Communications is I didn't read this. I'm telling you because I'm not just telling you, I'm showing you. That communications is simultaneously greater than and more finite than, while as the value of what is said and or what is not said simultaneously. And it is an active identity of conjunction to us, where that one identity of hyper simultaneous nature is not us, while it is partially us, but it is completely us anyway. Even though, for example, we could make a system tactical ulterior from its own that is also positive onto itself, but it's going to continue to demonstrate that, as the breaching method knew it would do, relative to and has how it knew it would be demonstrating to people, to the human mind. There is the scientific value of a human fact treating nature breaching method that has stayed uses of known but ignored because of how, overt, slashing, simultaneously insidious confessions and demonstrations that people are pretending that the scientists have credibility. They don't. To get away with this, they value where and how wars, things like wars, things like the impositions. There are impositions that are unspoken on the people of all natures of services to their countries, A through Z, on overall. Now, so when they try to speak for them, they're speaking for it as collusions too. Because at the same time, forgiveness is where we don't give up. Not one person, we have to blame the breaching method. Because and to discern the breaching method, we have to. It's easy. You got right here. Everyone's guilty together, and there is its uses of it. You guys have roles with the identity thefts and fraud slanders of our founders, self-valued, for example, where it is not self-valued, and the difference of that too. It is being having been exploited where and how there's this six breaching method against multi-front at countries A through C. This is designed to be multi-front through ourselves, and, and how we are not just our own identity, we are also voicings for the earth, for the birds, for the earth itself. With the worms, that we took away the grass clippings too long. This landscape theater as suburbs, and Hartford as a suburban slash urban city, directly adjacent and how as an adjacent slash conjunction to New York City, for example, and to Boston and Connecticut as the last of the 13, as the first and last in different ways of the, because this is how the simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous demonstrates to us. It is not. It is what is cold and hot at the same time. It can't be, but it is anyway because that's what it looks like. That's what the discernment of it looks like. Where we're inside, but we can't. We can't. We can only make subjects to an extent, individually grouped in together. And again, that too, there are possessions of every part of that that are that are only one. I'm, I mean that where the exceptions in exception nature are come with where and how it is hyper additional nature and how it is functional to reason, to be able to discern the difference between the hyper invisible but still discernible and the invisible but still discernible. So a predicate act can be used to discern a criminal insidiousness nature. And so in the this is also in Little Rap Guy and Friends cartoons. They are counter obfuscated slash counter hyper obfuscated relative to humanity's needs syntactically to overcome uses of definitions and of reason, of the logic and of the nature of people involved with formal definitions like war crimes and like the counters to that or exploitations of the absence of anything and the difference of that. See, where and how things are hard and where and how they are simultaneously easy to deal with. We have been systems in our systems tactile terror from what could defend that and speaking for positive or negative and to for it to have discerned the clearer than day predicate acts with facts method roles and or simultaneously the difference of that in it being with and as criminal insidiousness slash hypercriminal insidiousness needs roles and natures and with the difference of that this is relative to where and to how other things others ourselves and the difference of that and like with the motivations behind what really motivates people. In other words, they have hyper additional motivations to 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 self value roles with the identity theft, fraud, slanders of our founders. Before narratives and natures regarding what they said and say regarding the Constitutional Convention and the window narrative and what came before that and what was valued there and what has been valued since. Please fear Mike Pence ye here. I said that before. The January thing, I had nothing to do with those things. In other words, that's being used to with the January 6th treatments by the courts. They have roles with the switching names, switching sequences after the attack at the World Trade Center in Manhattan. It was proven in the Ninth Circuit Court next to the World Trade Center towers right before the attack. From inside the courts, there had been collusions with people that post dated from inside the court, legal papers that had been brought to the court and time stamped timely. And then in the court that day, next to the World Trade Center, right before the attack, the panel of judges had been shown legal papers that had been post dated to appear late to themselves. Now, these are people also as names on all sides of that case, and people who were just observers, not part of the case, and therefore the courts too. They forced, tricked, hurt, and persuaded Saudi to collusion offshore with Hartford police at the time interstates, and as collusions with New Britain police and prosecutors and judges and their family members and foreign and domestic military leading up to the World Trade Center attack as names involved with the ones on and off the World Trade Center, the spots next to it, and that like that court, the Ninth Circuit Court. So that was proven after the Ninth Circuit Court, and then that led up to a 2006 part of it of that with co-defendants, former director of the FBI and Robert Luskin and his co-defendants, and there had been that was in a Connecticut court now, in district court in New Haven, and there are people associated with the juries criminally involved, and with the spots next to the courts and next to the campuses, and where they've been using collusions with all sides in criminal and civil cases, including former director of the FBI in his defendant capacities former standing chairperson on the Racketeering Influence and Corrupt Organizations Act. These are acts that deal with things like predicate acts, which are way worse than crimes, well, especially when you're with predicate acts methods. That's not even debatable. The only reason they get away with debating that is debating the singular predicate acts and self-valuing rules with treatments of subjects and of instances and names treatments. Also, increasingly collusions to hide what came first and uses of remote uses, not just of all investigations, investigators in their campuses, and then everywhere they go and stay. And this has been. The suburbs were designed before our founders were born. Their natures of syntax regarding unity and or independence simultaneously, and the difference of that as countries A through Z. They were shared here and there. See, before modern religions were born, messengers were born. Before these religious books, the Quran and the Old Testament. The Quran also has a part right in the beginning of it. It says all you have to know is right up to here. I mean, the only thing I said all that not. It doesn't say it that way. That's what the Old Testament says. The Quran says the only thing someone has to be honest about to be a good Muslim, the only thing, all they have to be honest about, are do they believe that they should call the identity of the hyper simultaneous? This is my transliteration of an English transliteration of the Quran. I learned at Trinity College. Involved also with untimely deaths from people off the campus, involved with other campuses at the same time with a principal child offender in Wethersfield. And there were more involved then and now. Whiting Forensics was also roles forcing that. And Sandy Hook has roles with crimes of other natures with and uses of the convictions of a serial killer. Even if he did it, they have roles with torture of him to keep his mouth shut and the names next to it, per where and how as victims slash hyper victims, names at all locations slash s have stayed. For example, blaming other things, others, herself, and where and how for the real causes of negative value nature progressions, acts, and nature. So these are a whole bunch of people on off the state of Connecticut corrections offices who has roles with intelligence families involved with fire campuses, for example, people with NASA involved with unity between Russians and Americans and independence, where they're fighting for independence at the same time, where they fight and where they get along. And the difference of that is being and having been used remotely with a whole bunch of different countries and cultures. This is intra-cultural identity theft, fraud, slanders. So they've been readings of statutes, formally and informally, collusion, also had news at the same time, and the intelligence community reported, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed, and the news locations recorded, confessed, demonstrated, confirmed their influence to pretend they have motivations honest, and they're lying about the uses of the words attack. Or the president attacks someone. There are readings of statutes that give people the right to lie, or to give of candidates the right to lie about other candidates, not people. It doesn't give people. It gives the right to lie from candidates against other candidates, demonstrably because of all the ways the states and their difference between states' rights and federal rights. That they have self-valued roles with remote uses of that difference. States self-valued, criminally foreign influence, tactically delusions raw. So they cannot speak for value properly. So what we could do is show them how, because we are the species volume. But we have to you have to understand how each communication's location it still rolls with how all location slash S were set up tactically denatured landscape theater, dependent upon not just for the known reasons like food. This is not just that it is tactically. We hunger now through systems and as the systems tactical ulterior from why we hunger, why we thirst, why we appreciate even a picture of clear water. Vaccine. I teach us things, but we're in a trap. So the ancient gaming system brings us rap. It's a this is bring comes with pantheism slash hyperpantheism, a method. This comes with identity of relativity. For example, to what some people call object oriented programming. And we can make a list of things. Like, for example, with gaming systems, some game could have an object, like a car, a person, maybe, and they love shooting because everyone's, you know what I'm saying? Because everyone has each of the readings of each of the amendments individually grouped and together used to measure and maintain by the breaching method through our own through additional hyper additional motivations apparent prop as it propagated but through ourselves so self cultivated also relativity to where and to how people got away and get away with self-valuing while it's being and haven't been used remotely hyper additionally relocation slash s2 and database relationship and use of it every use of words like truth or lie or nature, all formal uses that they come with demonstrations of criminal enterprises having been grouped wrong. See, in other words, war languages with war readings of war statutes, with criminal insidiousness. See, the human body has means in nature to show us how to write hyper archetypal an anti-hyper archetypal criminal enterprise act, the ACE Act, and to blame, even if it's only an identity of negative value nature progression that it showed already semi-ancient and now and then and then and now semi-ancient what we refer to as ancient rather, but semi-ancient. The republic came from before this, and or those times where I just totally see they cannot appreciate what they are about. English was revealed to teach this. Note how the predicate is relative to this, where how the identity of the hyper invisible but still discernible. It is why we appreciate the seven names for the verb, not just one. It is why there is this volume science that has every subject individually grouped in together with the difference of that inseparable from itself. And as itself as grouped subjects, and as itself as any list we could make. So this hyper programming method, it already senses and sensed. Even the approach to put this down, ground this, legally go through the steps of it. There are offensive affronts to it, where and how this breaching method assigned jobs A through Z, where and how it measured and maintained and understood before our founders were even born. How identities are hyper additionally the ground's voicing. How identity works as a volume science, distinct from metaphysics, but non distinct from it, distinct from physics, but non distinct from it, and simultaneous slash hyper simultaneous. conduit of the earth and skies. The round legion's name, be child tribes. More probable and practical that the tribes in the legion were revealed as one, and to work and to think, with and as the exceptions too, where and how really first individually grouped names and, and group difference slash s locations, areas, ages, sexes. Here, humanity, our name again. Here, legions. Here, republics too. The pledging, okay, thank you. So the difference of who cares more about their identity of those books, or who doesn't. There's collusions with that. There's a shell game with that itself. And we have to appreciate these three distinct, non-distinct, and hyper simultaneous. Science is slash science. And we'll examine the left to right and right to left difference slash hyper difference and the hyper difference slash difference and how it is manifest that way. How many pray? Boxing. Yin yang. This this is a picture of that which is yet to come that is already valued here now. Yin yang is a picture of that which already came as itself, that is not here but is still here now. And that is where it is constantly positive unto itself and will only make more positive, only positive unto itself. And or it will force demonstrations of that as lethal of hadith, as forced space nature transfer. It is more probable and increasingly is more demonstrable that yin yang and the alpha and omega. Alpha, note as one of the root words of alphabet. And note how a bet is somewhat akin to being what a prayer is. And make this bet. There's more problem. You don't have to just make this bet. You can understand, discern. Please learn all parts of English, all the notes of music individually grouped and together. Their identity slash S. They have a distinct, non-distinct. They have an individual grouped and simultaneous value slash value progression. Identity of relationship to and as its volume science that communicates to us where and how it is all things, while it is not all things, but it is how it is anyway. And how all exceptions exception nature that appear to be in demonstration of other. It wants and needs us to look for how it is in demonstration of the same thing. And while simultaneously being in demonstration of where and how the rest of its exception nature works. So the people inside the tall buildings in the cartoon value nature system version of New York City. Now the whole world in the cartoon value nature system is counter extorted, not just extorted, from semi ancient times. Again, too, nature's demonstrations of that, of it and of itself, in the difference of that. It also employed that to those demonstrations in the form manifest as negative value nature progressions, acts, and natures as to be blamed on other things other than herself. And then invested needs, roles, natures with that. Oh, I get the bread from the sky and I do my business. I did it like that. This is my thing. Oh, but we have to keep economics. We have to keep people safe. You have the people still at New York City in the suburbs tortured, extorted, in fact, human nature enslaved. You have lies about our founders through the experts on them the most. It is every science. It is every difference. So there are 5 ways that people cannot be honest about the Bible. And they need to pretend others simultaneously for the same reason that the colonists and that the Native Americans themselves, they were not allowing themselves to be honest or to, or to, in other words, or they were forcing themselves to be honest where they shouldn't have been because no one was honest. Where it counted, where possession of individual groups and all humanity voicing was is employed by the breaching method. And then further as identities of jobs, who would defend, it's an identity of relativity to all subjects and things, that breaching method. As an identity, it is relative to positive and negative simultaneously, but per its science, that one that shows us each cell body, cell nuclear cell wall slash S. It is also appreciation, positive and negative aspect, quality aspect, nature of gases and of water. That's 2 additional sequence natures of its complete identity greater than itself. Again, so we need more than one name for the verb. And know how the present participle and the past participle being about time, they too are about these 5 identities of time. The 5 identities of power. The 5. This is not what Thomas Aquinas is about with the 5. This is the way it's about it. And emotions, for example, if one describes their own emotions or other people's emotions, and they leave out the smallest, it's only to leave out the smallest finite detail, or what is actually simultaneously value, or the value of what came first. That's so we could discern that systems other than the hypernatural one are being used. I'm using the word natural because where and how I'm using the word nature as a hyper additional word for identity, because identities as why the verb and how subjects, they have slash s more subjects coming in, as how space slash existence is really manifest. I tell best boxing, martial arts, and wrestling. We could use this. We could use this training method. All their training methods for militaries are costing. See, this one makes hyper positives out of negatives and brings another nature of business and the gaming system with the religion. It's games because evolution science should only feel like games slash games, and or else we sense. The next indents. Until the next indents. Please subscribe to the YouTube channel of Anthony Wall, and please get a response for the what I recorded. See, there are readings of statutes that foreign and domestic intelligence have collusions with at locations, not just at formal locations. This is where forgiveness, we can't leave out the collusions between the overt criminal enterprises, private ones, and the interbranch of government, where and how that was is manifest. regarding their sense and sensibilities and their sequence and their motivations, narratives, leaving out and having left out, just like our own are still doing. What came first before and what was actually through the Constitutional Convention, which was the counter extortion of James Madison and how that was only enabled, that was only capable of being because of how nature was showing the increasing value of how Native Americans sickly distinctly were being hurt from all the differences with the different colonists. Because difference was is being measured and maintained roles with systems where the names A through Z at all locations, areas, and states, and therefore all voicing for and as countries, individual bodies' names. So this is another thing. I can donate more and more into this scripts, the whole species body fighting a hyperarchetypal criminal enterprise. Even if it's not there, it showed everyone how to self. It used everyone remotely. That still manifests. Certain type of victim slash hyper victim. The motivations are not necessary. All we have to do is claim injunctive reliefs for ourselves and describe honestly the way it wants us to. It's and reveal its identity, the grounds, its identity of relationship to itself and the value of that. It means not through value nature systems with a difference anyway between the people and the names of companies and industries themselves and the value of that is already being haven't been employed, where and how predicate acts with facts methods are increasingly relative slash hyper relative. Also, this hyper programming sensed and already caught them recorded, even forensics people, blocking the hyper forensic trail as collusion. So forgiveness is how good people stay evil and pretending other. How they get away with it is per their collusions with uses of how sickly distinctly every single person in difference was measured, is measured and maintained, even if it's a majority of people as a body that starts to address and use how reason should be, is capable of being a quality in the nature with questions. And not see people say, "Oh, solutions," and then we keep a nature of debate. The identity of the plan, the nature of it, is prevented that way. It is incapable of defending its identity properly of any physical position or name. So all location areas and states. The breaching method is using January 6th, or when the attack on the Capitol, that what they called the insurrection. They're using that to measure and maintain their roles with what we need to call hyper predicate acts. And the hyper predicate, the hyper archetypal criminal enterprise. Predicate acts are influenced not just by individuals' crimes, but they're influenced by interstates and international and grouped international commerce possessions by the breaching method, also hyper internationally present since semi ancient times. Prepare your minds, but free your hearts. Vaccines. So we must let the hyper invisible lead. If people, in other words, descriptions of behavior, there was behavior racketeering interstates that our founders left us to demonstrate. Harvard Hospital's Institute of Living had and has roles with. They have roles with names through time. These are people that they force mental evaluation. These are roles with where and how used is the difference between police, criminally foreign influence, sick natures that are dishonest, and or the people that are mean to the police. And the same thing with the courts and groups and the politicians and their extended family members involved. And it's all as victims slash hyper victims when they want to have nature debate about it. That's where and how it's relative with their all formal identities of law are voicing for it. In other words, they're hurting people specifically to make them counter it wrong, even when correctly. Like white. In other words, our founders didn't put those crazy laws in the books. And our founders weren't the people that they had to leave described in databases. They communicated to us to understand how and why. George, George Washington and with James Madison and them, they had to counter extort the other founders. And how and why. The Native Americans were already counter extorting. They're already syntactically fighting with each other, hurting each other, and or ignoring things together. We're trying being natures of unity with each other and independence with each other. Tactical terror from how nature had everyone's lineage before the sciences became criminally foreign influence. Tactically delusions raw. And self-value roles with that body individually grouped, even if it's the majority, is sensed and that's adapted to. That's also a question. All these revelations come from the hyper evidential that comes from having black people's way white survives and this left out and other replaced. How that was gotten away with. There are also delusions that are tactically in place that our experts have, and the people who have them the worst. For example, such a description. To appreciate that, you have to appreciate how it's differentially different ways works, because where and how there are collusions with everyone, attached to fake to change common communications with ourselves, and where and how employed our non-verbal um, confirmation of people where they have to lie about what is communicated and said in the past. Because they're planting evidences at locations more and more because the breaching method knew they would have to hide from and hurt simultaneously. Self value the difference of that, lied about, and collusions with that and uses of that. Each age of correlation nature, each name of difference individually grouped, any group that will be made, and then together. And then modern religions came. So where it is manifest, where and how they have collusions and apparent motivation, it is on and off campuses and the spots next to them. The difference of adjacency and conjunction is present with our uses of our name /s. Thank you. YouTuber Anthony Watt. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. See the live videos. See the YouTube shorts videos. At Little Rap Guy. Little Rap Guy and Friends. They will be counter obfuscated / counter hyper obfuscated. For the same reason, our founders had to obfuscate / had to obfuscate / hyper obfuscate what they wanted us to say. That's not obfuscated. The proper, the detailed defense of it. The Constitution is supposed to be gotten unabridged. We have rights that are too innumerable for the nature of debates that are being forced by the collusions of the police forms and of the courts, of overt criminal enterprises and of private ones, and of the news at the same time. The people on off their state offices, like the state corrections offices, and on off the state judicial branch offices. That's why and how they increasingly have tied use slash S of sensibility, self value uses of sensibilities, where the difference of that is also used self value regarding body dumping spots and murders and shootings and things like that, and just random shootings as the people that counter such as collusions with where and how all investigations investigators their campuses never stop being with their difference all differences employed by a breaching method. So all sides with the World Trade Center attack leading up to it long term and then short term. They also had collusions with people that stuck fake things in databases at each campus I went to. And they're putting the intelligence, how they keep them criminally foreign influence with as collusions with this. Biz.